Hi, everyone. I am Sharika Sanders, owner and CEO of Transform the Gap, where I help accounting teams become their best selves. So, what does that mean? I work with them on balance sheet reconciliations, variance analysis, conflict resolution, effective communication, all the things that an accounting team needs, especially when they're going through levels of transition to become their best selves. And today I have with me someone that I know that you should know, Ms. Casey Jenkins, owner and CEO of 828 Consulting. Thank you so much for being here with us, Casey, as well as our friend in the back. And please tell us more about who you are in 828 Consulting.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I guess my dogs wanted their, 15 minutes of fame, I suppose, saying hello as we get started. They like to make their appearance. But yes, so I focus on process improvement consulting, specifically within supply chain. So much like you, I'm trying to help people out, figure out where they're spending too much money, where they can maybe optimize a little bit, and where they can improve things to take their company to the next level. I can work with any business process, but most of my experience is in supply chain. So I obviously like to stay more on that side of things. But it's an industry that's growing, changing, evolving. And with that comes new ideas and new ways of doing things and new perspectives. So
Yes, I love that. And I love even touching on new perspectives because things are always changing. I always tell people the only constant is change.
yes,
And if you or your team is not able to accept that, honestly, and adapt to that, then number one, you need someone like Casey because she can come in and pick up where in those areas where you may not have those strengths.
right.
But also it's just the way that we thrive, the way that we grow, the way if you want to grow you're going to have to become uh um I can't think of the word that I want to say, but you're going to have to adapt to change, long story
Yes,
short. uh
yes. And actually shift a mindset to be looking for
yes.
ways to change, right? With that proactive and forward thinking, to be able to make sure that you're always looking for a better way to do things. And that's just a continuous improvement mindset.
Yeah. And honestly, we don't all have it, and that's okay because that's why we have people like Casey. For those of us who
Exactly.
don't have it, but we know that we need to change, we may not know what that change needs to be, or we may know what we need, but not how to get there. And so that's when we
Exactly.
need to reach out to people like Casey. Hey, Casey, can you help us out? She's nice. She'll have a great conversation with you, tell you what you need, all the things. But before I go into my tangent, Casey, please tell us what is the one thing that you know that we should know?
Yeah. So, one of the things that I often find with working with my clients is that they tend to not realize how business is a system, right? And how it's made up of all these processes that have tasks, activities, all of it feeding up together to make this whole system run. And so when you have a gap or you have an inefficiency or you've got problems in a process, it infiltrates every aspect of your business because it's all connected. So if you have errors, if you've got risk, all of it will impact every area of your organization. And so when you stop to look at, hey, I want to improve things, or I want to fix this, or I want to implement this new technology, or I want to drive some sort of change, you have to approach it with the mindset of an end to end perspective.
Mhm.
And that perspective allows you to be able to close those gaps, thinking of everything else that it's going to impact. And so that's what I do, right? I try to go into these companies and educate them and give them the tools and the knowledge and the ability to look at things from that perspective. And then, so when I implement a solution, they can run with it. They can adapt to that change a little bit easier. They're able to actually sustain the change long after it's done because they've been
Mhm.
given that tools. They've been given the knowledge. They've been given the
Mhm.
know-how, right? They increase the core competency. And my dog here in the background, she's excited about this too, right? She's just all sorts of energized by this. But it's one of those things where a lot of business owners, They have these ideas, they started these processes, they got these things going, and they don't really know how to evolve. And that's where people like myself, even you, and other consultants that I've met with independently who are able to step in and assist in these areas.
See, I love that. And I love that you touched on a couple of, well, major things. But when talking about inefficiencies and the need for change and the need for growth, one of the things that we fail to do, and I'm speaking to those still in corporate, the CEOs, the decision makers, as well as, other entrepreneurs, we tend to focus on what's happening right now. And
Yes.
then we tend to work or respond in a reactive state because we're not
Yes.
prepared for what's next. We have all these grand ideas for things that we want and what we want to happen with our business. But then when it starts to happen with our business, we're not ready for it because
Yes.
we haven't set up a plan. We haven't
Yep.
set up processes. We haven't put things in place. And don't think that, oh, I'm too small right now. You start out wherever you are, you're in the perfect spot to start.
Right.
Um,
Yep.
you're in
Well,
the
and
perfect place to start. Yes.
and that gives an infrastructure, right? Because a lot of the problems with small businesses is that you know, we're all putting out fires, right? We're all trying to wing it on a daily basis. I can say that
Hmm.
as a business owner myself, right? And
Hmm.
so if you don't take the time now to build an infrastructure or build how your processes are going to be as you grow, those fire drills are going to get worse, right? Those
Yep.
problem
Yep.
areas that you're currently facing, they are going to get worse. And it's going to be a lot worse to handle later than it
Hmm.
is just to sort it out and deal with it right now. And the other thing too is a lot of times with these improvement initiatives, people try to go from point A to point Z. You can't do that. You
Right.
have to
Right.
take and hit every letter in between to be able to
Hmm.
make sure that your organization is at a point where it can sustain that point Z, right?
Yes.
And I've got so many examples of that, where I have clients, they'll come to me and they'll say, we want to do this. That's fantastic. That is a great end term goal to have. But here's all the other areas you need to hit first to be able to set yourself up to be at that end goal. And that is that long term thinking and the long
Hmm.
term outlook. You know, you can try to go in and do short term or short sighted solutions, right? But when it comes down to it, they probably won't last because if you don't set yourself up or you don't try to make sure that it's something that will be long term, it's not going to work. Now, I also understand the fact that you have to do some short term things to reach the long term. I get that. But we're talking like quick cash grabs of how fast can you save me money type things, right? Or
Hmm.
quick solutions that are just not going to support a long-term plan. And so it's when you look at it from that again end-to-end perspective, that applies more abstractly and broadly to the whole picture of this initiative as well and the entire roadmap, right? It's not just
Yes.
your next thing. It's what next thing is feeding into a longer term strategy and goal.
Yes. It brings to mind starting with the end in mind.
Yes.
Starting off thinking about this is where I know I want to go. So now, what are the steps? Who are the people that I need to make sure that I can get to that point? And
Yes.
honestly, if that's not enough encouragement for you to do it for yourself, for your team, for your company, then think about your customers.
Right.
Because what
Yep.
happens when your customer demand increases and you're not able to sustain it because you weren't
Correct.
prepared internally, because you
Yep.
haven't taken the right steps internally. But if you have a plan in place, it's, you know what, I was I was ready for this moment. I'm thinking about a movie, but I was made for this. I'm ready for this moment. And so you want to make sure that you're ready because we all know that word of mouth is one of the biggest or greatest forms of advertisement, and you want it to be positive because people remember that negative experience a lot
Right.
quicker than they will the positive one. And so you don't want to be on the bad end or the opposite end of that. So
Right.
I would say thinking about when you think about start rather with the end in mind, you want to think about people like Casey, how she can help you. Or even if you're not really sure, because you may not be sure, that's why you have people like Casey. You may not be sure, then reach out, have a conversation, and it doesn't hurt. It never hurts just to have that conversation and
Right.
see, hey, Am I in the right position? If you've already started and you just want to make sure that you're going along this process correctly, and hey, I have some questions. Maybe, there's a few tweaks that need to be made in what
Yep.
you're doing. It doesn't hurt to have that conversations and set yourself up for your best self later.
Right. And that's the other thing too, is it doesn't always take a project. It can just be, hey, I need to pick your brain for an hour or 2 hours, or maybe a once a month like touch base type thing to make sure that, you're validating that what's going on is what's going on, right? And
Hmm.
and that's, I think a lot of small business owners tend to think like, well, I don't want to hire a consultant because it's going to be a project. No, it's not always like that. It may just be, you want a small piece of advice. Hey, that's fine. Happy to have that conversation and chat, because if that
Hmm.
small piece of advice, I can give you a simple recommendation and then you run with it and you can execute that yourself, great. Have at it. Like, that's amazing. Like, I'd rather that be the outcome, to be honest.
Yes. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to share your knowledge with us. I appreciate our friend who she left. I guess she had her moment and that was it. She said all she had to say. But I appreciate you all joining me today, sharing your knowledge with each of us here and really helping us to think about where are we now? Are we on the path to where we want to be? And what help do we need to make sure that we can get there? Because we don't want to wait until the request comes or the demand comes, and
Mhm.
then we're trying to stumble and fumble and figure it all out. So I appreciate you for making us think about what it is that we need to do, and that letting us know that people like you do exist. Any um, last words, emotional speeches, final thoughts that you want to share with us?
No, the only final thoughts I'd say are, you can always connect with me on LinkedIn. I put a lot of content out there trying to, give educational value. And reach out if you ever want to chat. That's probably the easiest way to connect with me. And I'm a nerd about this stuff, so I'd be happy to talk.
So, all right, you heard it. She's looking for you. Have a conversation. She's already offered it. She's giving you two. She said, if you want to have that conversation, and you don't have a lot of people who are saying, hey, if you just want to talk things through. So she genuinely does this. She genuinely loves this. Reach out to Casey. I'll make sure that she is tagged, as well as her contact information is included so that you can follow up before it's too late. So thank you again, Casey and friend. And thank you all for your time. Thank you again for your time, Casey. And everyone have the best, most amazing day. Bye.